Now, how prominent is anti-Semitic sentiment in Canada, sir?
Unfortunately, it's out there. They say that it's the world's oldest virus, and it's been around for thousands of years. It is present in Canada just the way that it is present all the way around the globe. And as you just mentioned, B'nai B'rith has been putting out an audit of anti-Semitic incidents since 1982, and we have been showing for the past 5 years a real growth, over 2,000 incidents in Canada for the last 3 years. This is a problem that we need to address as a society because anti-Semitism, as at the end of the day, is a virus. It is a unique form, a unique manifestation of racism that, yes, it impacts the Jewish community, but at the end of the day, it's a plague that destroys democracy.
Now, as you mentioned, B'nai B'rith says it recorded over 2,000 incidents of anti-Semitism in Canada just last year. So can you tell us a little bit about the extent of these incidents and how victims have been impacted?
Absolutely. So these could be, it's a wide range. It could be on university campuses, in the workplace, at home. They could be vandalism, acts of violence, acts of harassment, and the harassment growing. Unfortunately, the trend is online. That's where a lot of us have spent our time, particularly during these COVID-19 years at this point. But there's been even a greater explosion this past year during the Hamas conflict. In the month of May alone, there were 61 acts of violence against the Jewish community. And to put that into perspective, last year, where there were approximately 2,600 incidents overall of anti-Semitism, there were only about 9 incidents of violence. So there was an explosive growth. And one of the things that we mentioned at the summit dealing with anti-Semitism our government held this past week was to recognize that, yes, there is a problem in the growth of anti-Semitism from the extreme right, from white supremacists, and from neo-Nazis. But it's also the manifestations of anti-Semitism we saw in Canada, on the streets of Canada, all across the country, was in anti-Zionist rhetoric and the singling out of the state of Israel. And unfortunately, that turned itself into violence attacking Jews.
And we know B'nai B'rith released some recommendations for officials to consider in tackling anti-Semitism in Canada. Can you go over these recommendations for us, sir? We've got about 2 minutes left.
Sure. So we sort of put it into 4 different baskets. The first basket is actually combating anti-Semitism, mainstreaming the fight, making sure that we have hate crime units across the country, properly trained, and dealing with victim support, highlighting the need to combat anti-Semitism, not just domestically here in Canada, but internationally as well. We should not be financing anti-Semitism through our international aid agencies, giving grants to organizations in Canada that for example, don't support the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. Then we want to foster Jewish life as well. It's not just good enough to say we're going to fight against racism, we're going to fight against anti-Semitism in this case. We have to embrace the Jewish community, as we should all communities, and say, you're welcome here in Canada. We're not interested in just creating some sort of a safe space for you. This whole country needs to be a safe space for all of us, and violence and harassment is not welcome at any identifiable group in this country. The next basket was about preserving Holocaust remembrance. We need to learn from the universal lessons of the Holocaust. Unfortunately, there are still those that deny it or justify it. That's just wrong, and that's a matter of educating our youth to respect other human beings. But the bottom line, and perhaps the most important, is creating follow-up mechanisms and processes. It's important that the government held a summit on anti-Semitism. It's important as an acknowledgement of the fact, but that's just not good enough. We need action. And so we're looking to our federal government to show leadership in the struggle against anti-Semitism. And that, at the end of the day, will show whether or not this is a success. What steps are we making as a country, to deal with this issue?
All right, Mr. Mostyn, thank you again for joining us today on Forum Daily.